And with that, we welcome you in on a Friday. It's an impromptu episode, but what a night it's been. Welcome back inside Engine House 31, everybody, on the Gem City Sports Podcast Network. And it's brought to you by, well, we'll tell you next week because we've got some new news coming on that. But what a night, Jonathan Williams. We just came from Fort LaBeouf calling the General McLean Meadville District 10 Championship game, and we're going to talk a lot about that. We'll also give you some insight into the other three games that happened tonight. It is our Week 2 high school football playoff reaction and analysis. And we're on YouTube, we're on Twitch, we're on Facebook, we're on X, wherever you get your podcast. Thanks so much for being with us. Let's just get right into it, Jonathan. Make sure I pull up the ticker here. 4A championship game for the first time in 18 years. General McLean are the 4A District 10 champions. They get it done 34-0 over Meadville in a game that really maybe was their most complete game of the season.
Yeah, they did it in every phase of the game. When you open the game off with a kick return touchdown, you block a punt in your game. Okay, check special teams box. Yeah. Okay, you rush for 3 touchdowns in this game and throw for another one. Okay, check the offense box. All right, you pitch a shutout on defense and only give up about 7 or 8 first downs the entire game. Okay, check the defense box. You've dominated the entire game, every facet of the game from start to finish. So the most complete game that I've seen them play all season for sure.
And it started, as Jonathan mentioned, with a kickoff return from Teague Berger of 93 yards. Meadville won the toss. They deferred, maybe kicking themselves from that. GM took it all the way back, led 6-0 after a missed extra point. And from there, they did it in a way that we haven't seen them do with consistency all year. All year long, Jonathan, we've talked about GM and the fact that, okay, we know they can throw the ball. We know Jacob and Isaac Zeitz are great at being able to connect with each other, although they only scored 1 touchdown today. More on that in a second. But it was the running game that really got it done. Teague Berger was the best player in this game by far. He has 3 total touchdowns, 2 on the ground, that one that he had on the kick return for all 3 of GM's offensive touchdowns. It just seemed like in the cold weather, in the wind, against the Meadville defense, they felt like GM, they needed to establish the run game and maybe prove it to some people in the state playoff field that they could do both running and passing well.
Hey man, I felt like Coach McCormick was trying to prove it to me. I've talked so much about running the ball on the pod. They might have caught wind of one of our past episodes because they came out, established the run early, and I said last night on our pod, all I needed to see them do was run the ball enough to keep a defense honest. I said you didn't need to run for 200 yards. Well, they said screw that and threw that out the window and went and ran for 200 yards. It's wonderful. It's great to see when you can score so many different ways. We know all about their weapons. We know all about the ZZ Top connection. We know they've got weapons on the outside that they can use at receiver. But when you can get Teague Berger into the end zone as many times as you did tonight, you can run behind Jared Corwin, get some first downs and crucial situations when you need to. It makes it really tough to game plan for. It makes you really tough to game plan against because there's no one place that teams can key in on and say, okay, if we stop this, we win the game. Okay, no, now it's if we stop this, then they'll do this. If we stop that, then they'll go to this. Yeah. When you have so many different options, it makes it way harder to game plan for you, and that's going to work to their advantage in the playoffs.
Tell you what, as much as the running game was great, the highlight reel play of the game was the miracle of Jordan Hare copycat. Fourth quarter, Isaac Zeitz comes in, bombs one down the field, chucks it up to Jacob Zeitz in triple coverage. It gets tipped and caught. Never should have thrown the football, but that's just the way the cookie crumbled for GM tonight.
Yeah, like I said on the broadcast, it was one of those like, Jacob's down there somewhere, and Isaac just throws it up. Absolutely, and I'll say this to him when he gets here, that you don't throw that pass, but you do throw that pass. So you got Jacob Zeitz running down there, and he's your receiver, and you have the connection with him that you do.
You can throw the pass when you're up 27-0 in the fourth quarter of a game that you think is in reach, and General McLean certainly felt that, and they ended up having it. We talk about the offense, but to me, the story of the game was the defense. Wayne Bradford came in with a game plan, and it was a game plan that Jonathan and I didn't expect. You know, when doing our prep for the game, the one thing that we saw in the film in the first game between GM and Meadville is that Meadville tried a couple of different things. And for the most part, General McLean's D played conservative, right? Wayne Bradford talks all the time about, okay, when you play a wing T offense, you have to let them come to you. You can't over pursue. You can't be too aggressive because you risk up giving the big plays. Yet tonight, we saw the opposite. 7 in the box, 8 in the box, even on 3rd and long, attacking the quarterback. GM gave up 2 long touchdowns in that game against Meadville back on October 10th, and they learned their lesson, and they were aggressive tonight in the box, regardless of what formation Meadville brought.
Yeah, they didn't leave any quarterback that was in the game, whether it was Epinesa or Johnson. They didn't leave anybody any time to do anything. there was always somebody in their face. There was always somebody forcing pressure. There was always somebody forcing either a quick throw, a bad throw, or coming up with a sack. They didn't let Meadville breathe, whether it was with their tempo offensively or whether it was with their pressure defensively. They kept their foot on the gas on both sides of the ball, and it really showed, and they ran away with this one.
And again, the defense making big plays, but to me, it was a bend but not break. Meadville had a couple of drives in this game, namely one at the end of the first half where they got inside the 30. Start of the second half, they had a good drive that got inside the 40. Then fourth downs came up. And to me, I think when you look at this game from Meadville's perspective, Ray Collins' teams are always great at being fundamentally sound. There was no question about that. Meadville didn't make any treacherous mistakes, maybe outside of that kick coverage at the beginning of the game. But it just felt like when push came to shove and it was 3rd and long and 4th and long, Meadville had to hope they got a big play on the ground, because if they didn't have the ability with A.J. Filippa to throw the ball down the field consistently and with confidence into that wind and into that cold.
Yeah, we saw some really big plays early on because they came out. I will give Meadville credit. They came out really aggressive offensively. They took 2 deep shots in their first possession, one of which had a chance to be caught, the other of which was a great play made by GM secondary. But they tested GM secondary early. They just never went back to it because they didn't find success doing it. They found all of their success in that last drive of the first half, running the football between the tackles, getting downhill. But that was the most success that they found the entire game. They couldn't establish the passing game. They couldn't complete short passes. They couldn't complete intermediate passes or deep passes. It just became really one-dimensional because running the football was all that they were able to do successfully.
And at the end of the day, too, when you look at the way GM was able to build the lead, Meadville stuck to their game plan, give them credit, but it never felt like they were in a position to come back in the game because they didn't have the passing option, and that was pretty evident early on. They did have a couple of really great running plays, whether it was Jordan Lawrence and the bunch that ran the ball well. They had a couple of long 3rd down conversions via the run, but they just couldn't throw the football, and that was the big problem that happened in this game and ultimately had Meadville fall short. For General McLean, I think you probably feel better about this game and the way it played out than any other game that you did this year because of the question marks that you had. Slancer team, as good as they are, had a lot of question marks coming in, at least by your and my eye. They weren't running the football as consistently as they would like to. They didn't necessarily have the standout, standalone effort that they've had on defense all season long. And tonight, it felt like they fixed the issues that were prevailing them in this regular season, and they got to feel good going into the state playoff.
Yeah, if there were any teams in this state bracket that's going to come out soon that were looking at GM and looking at them kind of like, okay, they're really good here, but we can exploit them there. We can expose them there. I'm not seeing very many weaknesses from this Lancer team after tonight. They showed that they can run the football at will when they want to. They showed that their defense can get stops and pitch a shutout and play a complete football game for 48 minutes and absolutely choke out an opposing offense. They've shown they still can pass the ball and they still have the ability to go over the top for explosive plays. They had 2 of them tonight for, a combined 70, 80, 90 yards on 2 pass plays over the top, and they didn't have to go to it very often, but they showed that they can do that. They showed that they're sound on special teams. They blocked a punt, return a kick. Like, where is the weakness? What are you going to exploit? What matchups can you exploit? What are you going to show that they don't do well? Because right now, with this performance tonight, they look like they do everything well.
This team draws so many similarities to me of the 2006 state championship team. And I don't say that because it's, the story, of course, is great. It's the first District 10 title for GM since that state championship winning year. They had gone through trials and tribulations. They finally get it done. But you look at the team back in 2006, and it was a run-first team. Drew Astorino was probably the best running quarterback, if not quarterback, that General McLean's ever have in their history. We know the storylines behind him. If you're an Edinboro community member, you know how good he was. But it was a team that wasn't a big team, but they were fast and they were assignment-oriented. And I think that that's something that Marshall McCormick has drawn comparisons to, at least on the field with this team this year, because they are one that always know where they need to be, but aren't afraid to use the teammates behind them if they want to go make a play. I don't think there's a timidness to this team, and that's something that you maybe see with great teams is, okay, they're so fundamentally oriented that they have to be rigid and make the play where they're supposed to make the play. Maybe they don't go out, and maybe they don't be aggressive with something. I think GM's willing to be aggressive with what they do, and I think that that's something that will serve them well as we get to the state playoffs. But a great story in the first G10 title in 18 years.
Yeah, it's one of those things. It can go one of two ways with a team like this. First time being this good, and as long as it's been, you can either go into it like you have the pressure of the world on your back because you're carrying the torch for your entire town, your entire community, or you can play free football. You haven't been this good in a very long time. You're going farther than a lot of GM teams have gone, and you're in kind of rare air, so to speak. Enjoy it and play fast, play free, and enjoy every play for what it is, because you're playing football at a level that a lot of people from your area haven't been able to say that they've ever done before. This GM team has seemed to take the second approach. They're loving every play. They're enjoying every moment. They're flying around. They're playing really good football, and they're playing really hard football. And it just doesn't seem like they feel the pressure.
No.
That's dangerous.
And I think Marshall McCormick has shown that, and that he's a fearless leader of this team. And they believe, and that's a big thing at this point in the year is belief. They're likely going to play Clearfield, I would think, in the 4A first round. We'll see. Get your butt over here, Wayne. You know what? Wayne Bradford doesn't just get to give us a face and whatnot. And can you slide in here? Are you good? How you feeling?
Feel great. Wow. Kids just played lights out. Physical, ran around. I don't think we gave up an explosive. Really thought that they would try to throw the ball over our head in the wing T set. They had the one. Obviously, the wind was a factor. And then, I think we surprised them with our aggressiveness against the 10 personnel. So kudos to Mr. Brian Flores for being an innovator and saying, what the heck, put 6 or 7 on the line of scrimmage and see what they're going to do.
We were just talking about that as the aggressiveness of, okay, they were in wing T. They even went in spread, and you still put 7 on the line and you attacked even on 3rd and 12, 3rd and 13. Was that something you saw from the first game? Because I know you had said we want to clean up some of the big plays that we had given up. Was that in an effort to limit big plays? And did you feel like, okay, if we attack them, we're going to force them to get the ball out?
Well, number 7 is so athletic. He's the slot. He's the wing. So he's a ball carrier that has some throwing ability. Yeah. And his ability to extend the play, got us for 2 touchdowns, a 4th and 18 and late. We did not want to allow that to happen. Sometimes you just got to go for the gusto. We did that against Prep. We're fairly successful. The week off, the extra week really helped us because, as I told you in the first game, you have to spend 80 to 90% of your time defending the wing T. If they run the wing T successfully, never getting spread. So you better take away A before you can take away B. So those extra days certainly helped us, and we did clean that up. All the tight bunch we weren't ready for. They had all the runs to the 3-man surface and 10 personnel in the first week. So our kids were great, and we didn't have to change personnel. So we were able to defend wing T and 10 personnel with the same 11, which really makes it, fun and easy.
Yeah, we saw, and I saw a lot of the same looks that you ran against Prep. Some of that aggressiveness. You didn't give them an opportunity to really feel comfortable back there. You put a guy in his face, you're rushing 7, somebody's getting home every time. You either got to get the ball out of his hands really quickly, make a bad decision, make a bad throw. You didn't give him time to really ever set his feet or let anything develop. So that was really key to getting them back out of spread. They got to the point where they felt like they couldn't play in spread. They went right back to wing T because they felt like that's all that they had going for them. They went to it early. They tried it. It didn't work at all, and they went right back to what they felt like they were going to have the most success doing, and that was in large part due to you guys' aggressiveness on defense. So it was definitely something we noticed from the box. I had one call where I thought, okay, it's 3rd and long. We're gonna rush 3, drop 8. You come out and say screw that. Put 7 on the box. 7 on the line of scrimmage. Somebody in his face. It's like a 5-yard out route because that's all he had time to throw. And I'm like, all right, well, that's what type of game it's going to be. They're going to be aggressive the whole way, and it worked to you guys' favor.
Yeah, man, it was a great performance. And I, you and I are from Edinboro. I was younger, much younger at the time, saw the 2006 state championship team. We said that this team draws a lot of similarities, at least in my view, to that team. What does it mean, just from a coach's perspective, for somebody who's been there before, to this community, to win a championship, having it been 18 years in the making?
Well, you saw the celebration, at the end. So I'm tickled pink. I consider myself a lifelonger. I moved to Edinboro in 1999. So my 3 children all grew up here. My 3 children went from kindergarten through 8th grade in this system. My oldest went to the high school, and my other 2, chose to go a different route. But we never left the community. After I got non-renewed or let go at Edinboro, I chose to stay. So it's been the best 5 years of my life now after my first coaching career. So the community has always, blessed us, blessed our children. So it's a wonderful place, and it's really awesome to be able to just see what it means and live small town, rural, Western Pennsylvania football.
Don't think local sports matter? All right, let's see what happened tonight. Hey, man, go enjoy your drinks.
Thank you. Thank you for being there. Thank you for all you do for high school football. You guys are awesome. And I won't see you next Thursday night. We'll keep that superstitious thing going.
Sounds like a plan to me. I think it's more so for the Ravens win.
Go Ravens.
I was going to say, I think for Wade, it's more so that the Ravens pulled it out on Thursday night than anything else. But we'll keep that tradition going. It's great to see. And again, for this Edinboro community, 18 years in the making. This team has been close at times, have never gotten over the hump, and they finally do with Marshall McCormick in his 3rd season. Do want to get to a couple of other games and quickly mention in 3A, the 1 and 2 seeds are moving on. Sharon beats Titusville 40-7. Hickory beats Corey 42-7 in the 3A semifinals. I know we had some talk, Jonathan, and I know you picked and Nick picked Corey in this game. But ultimately, I'll tell you what, I think for Corey and Titusville, 2 great seasons, but ultimately the offense is just not getting it done in the end.
Yeah, we looked a lot at Corey's offense, and they had some really explosive offensive performances throughout the season. But it was one thing that we were looking at. Okay, you scored 9 points against Fort LaBeouf last week. We were interested to see if your offense was going to show back up and if you were going to be able to get back to kind of like your typical levels of offensive production. Apparently, it was not the case, and that wasn't able to happen. Sharon and Hickory are a class of this division of football, and I think everybody just kind of known that going in. Corey had a really good chance, in my eyes, of kind of pulling out an upset, and Titusville, on the ground, they've been superb. They've been one of the best running football teams in all of D10. Jackson Covell has been an absolute stud all season long. But when you're running up against powerhouses like that, we mentioned it last night, you have to play mistake-free football, and you have to score nearly every time you touch the ball. If you don't, it's really hard to beat those teams.
And meanwhile, for McDowell, I'll touch on the Trojans. They fall in the 6A sub-regional 35-7 to State College tonight. Seemed like they had a few chances near the end of the half to score points, but unfortunately against the Little Lions team who had lost 1 game coming in, Blair's Myers and the offense not able to make it work. It's so interesting all year. The offense is what carried the Trojans, and in the last 2 games, it was the defense that really won them the D10 championship and then kept them competitive in the 6A sub-regional. I do think Blaze Myers, James Ziegler, Stephon Porter, they're all going to have great college careers if and when they choose to play football. A great year for the Trojans. It's just in this rivalry that State College and McDowell have had the last 3 seasons, it has been back and forth, but State College gets it done. So we have one District 10 team, one Erie County team, I should say, that moves on to the state playoffs or moves on in their respective tournament, and that is General McLean tonight. Before we go, I want to shout out somebody. He's over. Hey, Casey, come over here for a second. I want to shout out Casey Ramey. If you watched on our General McLean channel and our podcast network, Jonathan and I called the game for GM and Meadville. But Casey Ramey is a senior at General McLean. This guy is the biggest tech wizard and the smartest guy I've ever seen. He got everything ready with the broadcast tonight. We had some issues, and he still made it work. And I want to give a shout-out to you, Casey. You do all the stuff with Lancer Link and the GM Perspective. What a great broadcast tonight. And without this guy, we wouldn't have been on the air. So a pretty cool night, I'm sure, for you, too, getting to see the team win a D10 title.
Awesome night to see the team win the D10 title. An awesome night to get to see what I created and wanted to create come to fruition tonight with you guys, and then cameras and getting to broadcast things. Looking at Facebook right now, people love the stream and are appreciative of it, and were homesick or in Ohio and watched it. So,
Not going to lie, did you think we were going to get on the air at like 6?
I know there was a point that I kept it calm, but I was not thrilled with things, people, equipment. I was like, what the heck is this?
You know, he said he's going to make a shirt of how many tech media guys does it take to set up a high school football broadcast. It's a lot more than 5, I'll tell you that much. I want to ask you, though, from your student perspective. I mean, you talked to Coach McCormick. You've talked to the kids on your podcast, the GM perspective. What has the vibe been like around this football team in the building, knowing how good they are and knowing what it's been like to be on this journey, just from a student perspective?
It's been exciting and fun. And sometimes in the high school, we get fun where it's like, this isn't fun. We're acting dumb. But it's been a fun atmosphere. Even today, it was bubbling with fun vibes. Not, I'm not going to smack you into a locker. And we've seen that. And I've thought like, oh, boy, what is this going to look like? But we're excited. I'm excited to see what Monday brings and into next week and as we continue down the road.
Casey, great stuff, man. Go enjoy some pizza. I didn't want to call you over here for no reason, but great stuff, and hopefully we'll work together next week.
Yes, me as well.
Appreciate you.
Casey Ramey, he's the hero of the night, that's for sure. I have never seen a high schooler with that much talent in this field than he, and it's a great thing to know that the future is bright for him. Final thoughts, Jonathan. We're going to get some food in a second here, and again, thanks to Engine House for letting us set up and do our pod here. But for General McLean, yes, the District 10 championship is tremendous. The city and the town is going to celebrate long into the night. But knowing the way you played tonight, you have to think if you're Marshall McCormick, you wake up tomorrow and you think, we got a legitimate shot to get into the final 8 with our first-round game next week.
Marshall McCormick being a college guy, he played in college. He probably takes the mindset of a lot of college coaches. You get 24. You get 24 to celebrate this one. You get 24 to talk about and think about how well you played. And you turn the page because state playoffs are around the corner and you're not satisfied with just a D10 championship. You have a state championship caliber roster. You have the horses to do it. You have the pieces to do it. And you have the guys to make this run. So now you put everything into that because knowing him and the competitor that he is, he's not going to be satisfied with anything less than an appearance in that game. So they're going to be laser focused on doing everything to get there. And I feel like you have the best chance, GM Lancer fans, you have the best chance that you've had since the last time you've done it.
It is so interesting because we're not looking too far ahead. Of course, neither is GM. We don't know what the semifinal and the final would bring, but it's going to probably be Clearfield or some team from District 8 or 9 coming up next week. But then you look ahead, and if I'm Marshall McCormick, I'm a Pittsburgh guy. We met his mother tonight who drove up from Pittsburgh and said she listened to our podcast. So thank you, Mrs. McCormick, for being a great and spirited listener. A Pittsburgh guy, watched a lot of Pittsburgh football. He played Newcastle in week 1 of the season. You look at the Whitfield bracket in 4A, Alec Whippa's there. Thomas Jefferson's there. He'd love nothing more, I know. Marshall McCormick, I know him well, to have a chance to play that Whitfield team in the state quarterfinals. But
sure Thomas Jefferson just took down Alec Whippa tonight, too.
So there you go. Thomas Jefferson would be the team likely that is the case. And I know Marshall's going to want to have a little vendetta against his friends from Pittsburgh, but we'll see. That would be in a couple weeks. For now, though, we leave you tonight with our podcast, with our next show coming Monday. It's going to be the Flagship City Sports Talk podcast. Jonathan gets to co-host in studio. I'm going to be virtual. And we'll talk all the weekend NFL action with the Steelers and the Commanders playing, as well as the Bills in action, plus more from District 10. Because there are games coming up tomorrow. The 2A final, Sharpsville and Farrell is tomorrow. The 1A semifinals, including Cambridge Springs, Greenville is tomorrow. So we have more football coming up. We're going to get some food. Enjoy your Friday night. We leave you with General McLean, the 4A district champs, their first title since 2006. What a night, and it's only beginning. The weekend continues next.